think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and today I'm honored to bring a special guest on, James Robbins. He is a leadership consultant. He is a change specialist. He is an adventurer, to say the least, and he is also an award-winning speaker. And his journeys and his story is a huge testament to personal development. So, I can't wait to, have him on. James, thank you so much for being here.
Davin, thanks for the invite. Great to meet you.
So let's dive in a little bit. I mean, I know I've seen some of your stuff, with your hiking and everything like that, and some of this, talks and stuff that you've done. I mean, you've been on some of the biggest stages. So let's start it with your journey. I mean, what from like childhood to now, like what's the story of James Robbins?
For sure. I grew up on a tiny cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I was a shy, introverted, red-headed, freckle-faced kid, deathly afraid to get up in front of the class and do show and tell as a kid. The journey, now I do get on stages and speak to thousands of people. And I can tell you that I would have never thought I could do that. Everything comes down to changing how you think, which is why I love your podcast, right? Talking about mindset. It's the power tool for sure.
So, I mean, how did you get started in speaking on stages? I mean, that's like being an entrepreneur and, even someone that just wants to get on and talk about their story. What's that process even like?
So my journey was one that surprised me. I was in college. I was on my way to become a film director. That was something I loved. I loved stories. And then I started attending this church that a lot of college students were going to, and I really liked it. And then they gave me a summer job, and I thought, okay, this beats waiting tables. So I did that. And then when I graduated, they said, hey, why don't you come work for the church for a while? Which was never in my plan, like not even in the top 100 things that I planned to do with my life. But I really enjoyed helping people. And so I said, okay, well, why not? So I started doing that. And eventually you get asked to get up front. And, to me, that's like, I can't do this. But I remember one day, in fact, this was back when I was a college student, the preacher had said, hey, we want you to get up in front of the church and share, 5 minutes what you're learning in the Bible, as I was just this young guy. So I was like, oh, I hate this, right? Like, I don't want to get up and doesn't he know that I can't do this? But I remember a distinct day, I was sitting on the grass and moaning about this. And it was like a voice inside my head that just said, hey, could you, just for one time, could you not be so worried about what everyone thinks about you and just go for it? And if you fail, then let's really fail. Let's at least make it a great story. And I thought, okay, one time I can do that. So I actually prepared, and then I went, and I was still nervous, but I decided, all right, I'm going to go for it. I was passionate, and I shared what I was learning. And when I got done afterwards, people came up to me and said, hey, you should do more of this. And so that's where it began. And so I worked for a number of years in ministry, sort of followed John Maxwell's path, where I was a minister for a while, and that gave me the reps on stage. So every week I was having to, in a sense, create new presentations and fail and fail and fail and, put people through a lot of bad sermons. But over the time, that and reps, that helped me out.
No, it's so interesting. I mean, doing podcasts and doing, I run a business, and, with my gym, like I could get in front of the whole gym and talk and stuff like that. But I could say for myself, getting on stage, early or late last year, even though you're talking about stuff that, it's a completely different feeling. And even like myself, like all of a sudden I did feel those nerves, my voice was a little shaky and stuff. So with, speaking the first time, being an introvert, I'm sure that was, even though you might have built up the confidence, to a degree, like there's still those nerves. Do those nerves subside, or do they kind of go along with each stage or audience size, as you continue to grow as a speaker?
They are still there, but it's different. You frame them differently. It's an excitement. It's like that feeling you had when you get up, or when you get up in front of your gym, I still have that. I can go to, let's say, speak, and it might be a big audience, like 1,000 people, or it might be 300 people. I still feel this sense of uh, I'm activated, but I say that in a positive way. Like my heart's up, I'm ready to go. But there's also a difference between being activated and being stressed. And so there was a study that was done. I find this fascinating. There's something called the Trier social stress test, where psychologists have basically come up with a test guaranteed to stress you out. And so how it works is, let's say you're in the test, Devin. They bring you into this room and they say, "Hey, Devin, nice to meet you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go out and give a 5-minute presentation to this audience on why you are the best candidate for this fake job." They give you the job description, and you don't really get to prepare. And all of a sudden, you get out there and you're speaking in public, which is one of the most terrifying things for people. And they don't laugh if you crack a joke. They just it's like a tough crowd, like speaking to teenagers, right? So you're there, and then when you get done, no one claps. And then they tell you to stay on stage, and they say, "Devin, we need you to count backwards by multiples of 13. Start at 2048. Go." And then you're trying to think through it, and then they're like, "Faster, Devin, you need to go faster." So anyways, that's the Trier social stress test, and it stresses everyone out. And how they know is they swab your saliva before and after and measure your cortisol, and your cortisol always spikes. Well, they took a group, and when they first came in, they would say, "Hey, Devin, welcome to the study. First of all, we just want to ask you, what are some things about you like that you value? What are your values, Devin?" And you might write them down, and then they ask you, take one value, and how does that show up in your life? Write a couple paragraphs about that. So there you are, and maybe you like to give back to others, right? So you're writing about how you like to give back to others. Then they're like, "Hey, Devin, you're gonna have to go give this 5-minute presentation." And whoa, okay. And you do the whole thing. What they found was the people that did that, though, they were activated, meaning that their heart rate was up. They had that moment, but when they measured their cortisol after, it didn't spike. On a biological level, they weren't in a place of stress. And that's the difference when you go to do a presentation. You should be activated, but you shouldn't be stressed. And so how do you not be stressed? Well, that was a great study to show that when you can ground yourself in who you are, actually, it's your identity. That's your home base. So when you get back in touch with who you are, you're less concerned with what anyone thinks of you. It's like the greatest inoculation against stress. So it's a long way to answer the question, but to say, yes, I still get activated, but I don't get stressed. And when I do, I'm able to catch that and bring that back down. And two things I do to help me when I do a presentation, and just for whatever reason, I walk in that day and I notice I'm feeling insecure or something, I'll get my body big, kind of like Amy Cuddy's, TED Talk. I'll go somewhere where I can get my body big. And the other thing I do is I look out over the audience and I try to empathize with them, meaning it might be a group of HR executives. And I think, what's it like for these people? I mean, they're busy, they're stressed, they're at this conference, might just be like the only break they get in their daily grind. And I want to serve these people. And it's that transference of getting your eyes off of you and onto other people in a place of service. And that's where you're really able to show up.
No, that's so awesome. I mean, two things, like one, I think from that study and everything, it shows too, like you hear that saying and it sounds so cliche, like preparation is key. But from that, and even though it's just, that the stress test of, writing it down and, having a little bit of time, you are preparing in a certain degree versus you're going to go talk, and it's like doing things just spontaneously. And so it's like preparation can lead to, you might still be nervous, you still might still be activated, like as you said, but the stress level, the cortisol levels, are definitely reduced from that. And that's so interesting. But the other thing that you did mention, the getting big, I think it's so cool because I mean, like the superhero pose, like you put your hands on your hips and you puff your chest out and you hold it. And it's one of those things where there is a psychological aspect to it that you start to get that self-confidence, you start to get that self-belief in everything from it. Because I mean, I've tried it before and just to see. Same thing if you all of a sudden you're feeling a little sad, you just hold a smile, whether you feel like it or not, just hold a smile and you just start to feel a little bit lighter. So I mean, it's so interesting.
For sure. Yeah, the mind body connection is fascinating. I don't think anyone fully understands it yet, but it's pretty cool.
Do you do any like, I guess, breath work or like meaning? I know there's different ones. I mean, I read a book by Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk, and I believe there's like 9 different breath techniques that he does in there. But there's ones to get you, in your words, activated. There's ones to calm you. There's anything like that. So before you go to speak on stage, do you do anything like that to kind of like settle yourself?
I don't intentionally. If I do, it's just in subconscious. I should do more of that stuff. Every time I hear about meditation or breath work, I think, I got to do more. But I think on the speaking end, I am able to be aware if my breathing is shallow, and then I know, okay, that's not good, right? Like I can't be in that place. But again, so much of, let's say, speaking, and this translates to anything in life,
Mhm.
so much is getting past that barrier of you being afraid of what people will think. And so again, I'm still that I'm still that redheaded introvert from this tiny cattle ranch. I'm still that person. I have to fight against it. So let's say when I go to speak at a conference, and maybe it's a really big one, there's 2 things I always do in addition to the things I already told you is I go and meet the front row, which I don't want to. Like, to be honest, like I don't want to talk to anyone. I just like get me up on stage and then just get me down. That's my nature, right? But I go and I meet the front row, and I'll try to joke around like, oh, no seats left at the back, or I try to get them laughing. But it's more for me, right? Like I need some friends. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll go to the back as people are coming in, and I'll pretend I'm like volunteer handing out flyers, and I'll just joke around with people like, "Hey, Sarah, you're not late yet," like because they all have their name tags, and they don't even know that I'm the speaker until I get up on stage. But it's just me breaking the plane. It's like an icebreaker for myself, and once I do that, I'm in a different place. And the last thing I would say, this goes back to the kind of the power poses. I remember a breakthrough I had once. I was going to speak at this conference with a bunch of bankers, and nobody was allowed in the room yet. And the sound guys had done their check and they had left, and I was the only one in there. And so I just walked around the room, arms big, and I just said, "This is my space. Like, this is my room. I own this place." And I had to like take ownership that I'm not a guest speaker. This is my room. They're coming in, and kind of like they're coming into my house. Because when people come over to your house, you're not nervous, right? It's more like when you go to their house, you're like, oh, like, what's the rules? Should I take off my shoes? I can't just open the fridge. But your house, you do what you want. So there's that sense of ownership of kind of your domain that's going to help you as well with your confidence.
No, that's so awesome. I mean, one last question I have for you, on the speaking thing before I want to kind of transition into, some of your ventures and some of your books and stuff like that. You've shared you share the stage with some of the biggest names, from John Maxwell, Brene Brown, and even like Bill Clinton, former president. What are maybe some of the lessons that you learned from those experiences, or what did you learn from those experiences?
I learned that it doesn't matter who other people are. They all have great messages, but you have a message, and your message is going to speak in ways that theirs doesn't. So, to give you an example about President Clinton, uh, he spoke right after me, which it's amazing. Anyone who's become president, like, to be able to do that is quite the feat, whether you like a person or not. But I had many people come to me after and say, yes, it was cool to hear his stories or whatever, but what you said really resonated with me, or what you said really helped me, or I liked your presentation better, or whatever. So it wasn't about whose was better. It was just understanding that wherever you are in life right now, you have something to say, right? You have value. And so you don't have to get to some other level. And, social media has made it easy to compare ourselves. And it's just one of the worst things that we can do. Everyone has a message. And the other thing I would say about John Maxwell was an interesting one, because, I told you my journey started out as just a young preacher, and I didn't know anything about leadership. So his book was the first book I ever read, 21 Laws of Leadership. And I read many of his books over the years. When my book came out, called 9 Minutes on Monday, his team ended up inviting me to go down to South America with John and to teach this leadership framework of mine to 1,000 business owners, which was his audience. And it was really cool. It was literally him and I for the entire day, just getting to work together. And so that was this surreal moment for me, right? To go from it was the first leadership book I ever read, and now I'm on stage with him. That was a cool moment.
That's so cool. I mean, that is, to have someone that reach out to you as big a name as that, and something that you read his books, and all of a sudden you just release a book and get reached out to. I mean, that probably felt so rewarding, or giving yourself a pat on the back, definitely for that one. With your book 9 Minutes on Monday, it was a game changer, from what I'm seeing for a lot of leaders. What was the core message, or what was the inspiration for wanting to write that?
It came out of my work with helping leaders in different companies, because the challenge for a lot of people is leadership feels a bit nebulous, right? Like, it's not like a checklist of, let's return an email. So it's a bit nebulous because we're working with people. The second thing, though, is people are busy, insanely busy. Everyone's busy. And so what I noticed was, the problem is that leadership is not easy, but it doesn't have to be complicated. And leadership comes down to really some basic things that just have to be repeated relentlessly, and that actually don't take a lot of time. So 9 Minutes on Monday, the concept is, every Monday morning you come in, and before you jump into your work, you ask yourself 9 questions. And these 9 questions, each question has to deal with, relates to what we call an engagement driver, which is a need that someone has, like the need to be more than a number, the need to grow, the need to find purpose at work. And so you just ask yourself these 9 questions, and you make a small micro commitment for each one. Who am I going to recognize this week? Who am I going to help? Who am I going to give some feedback to on their progress? And it's by making it simple that people were able to go, okay, I can do this. And it's those tiny steps, right? Repeated 20,000 times. That's what gets you to the top of the mountain, not the big speech at halftime.
No, I mean, I think that is so crucial. That is so cool. With that, I mean, that's such a awesome technique and stuff to use and kind of strategize your week. What would you say maybe are the biggest, or some of the biggest mistakes that leaders are making, and how could they maybe shift their approach, alongside obviously the 9 Minutes on Monday?
One of the biggest mistakes leaders make is that they don't give enough deposits. What I mean is, think of your staff. It's a little bit like a bank account. There's deposits and withdrawals, right? And so withdrawal is like, hey, I need something from you, or hey, you need to do better, or anything that I'm asking from you. Well, that's part of work. You have to do that as a leader, but there also has to be deposits. It's how we balance out in a sense, the relationship, because any work relationship it's a value exchange, and it goes beyond, hey, you're going to come here and work, we're going to give you pay. All right. So that's the first part of the value exchange, but then it elevates, right? So it's like, if a boss is just constantly like, Devin, why are you late? Devin, this, Devin, that, right? It's just all the things you do wrong, but never says, I appreciate you. Never says, hey, let me help you get better. Never never just takes an interest in your life. Over time, what people do is they to kind of reset the account. They pull back, and they'll say things like, okay, well, I'll come do my job, but don't think I'm going to do anything extra. And so you always want to make sure that you're having more deposits in the account than withdrawals. because if you have too many withdrawals, we go into the red, right? Then that's when we're overdrawn. And so what happens is leaders aren't thinking enough of appreciate people, recognize great work, help someone grow, be interested in them as people. All those things stack up so that when you have those moments of, hey, this isn't like you, I expect more. Hey, I need you to stay late and to get this done, right? Then people will go to, they'll run through a wall for you if they feel like you care about them and that bank account is stacked. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. I mean, it goes into kind of like what you were saying with those, 20,000 steps to get up the mountain. It's like part of those 20,000 steps is that constant deposits, so that you're building your team and you're creating that connection so that it isn't creating a separation between them, clocking in, clocking out, and just, doing what bare minimum they need to get done. It does make so much sense though, because I think that's something that we do overlook as leaders or as business owners. We're like, well, we're paying them, so they should want to do their job, or they should just do the job I'm paying for. It's like, yeah, but they're people, and they want to be recognized. And that's a huge part of it. And when they are doing well, like, you got to make sure that you give them that recognition and let them know you want more of this because they're doing awesome. So I think that is so key.
Exactly. And you could be a leader to people who are your clients and your customers. Like in your case, I don't know much about your gym, but when it's one thing if I go to a gym and no one talks to me, it's another thing if I go to a gym and the owner's like, hey, what's up? Hey, did your daughter pass the exam that you told me about, right? Like the owner knows something about me and my life. The owner's like, what are you working on today? Hey, how can we help you get better? Like all of a sudden that gym owner is now a leader in my life. And why am I going to want to go anywhere? And so for those of you who are listening who are business owners, it's not just about, serving the client with whatever your product or service is. Think, how can I also be an influence in this person's life as a leader? Because I tell you, when we find a good leader in our life, whether it's an actual boss or just a mentor or someone else, we will be loyal. We'll stay with them.
That is so true. I mean, it's funny because, with my gym's like a boot camp style model, we have no class time, so it's a little bit different. But me and my business partner, the members respond to us differently. And so if I'm on the floor, like, with the members and everything like that, everyone's working a little harder. And then, one of the clients is like, oh, Devin's here, you got to make sure you're working out hard. And I was like, I don't even yell at you guys. Like, what's going on? And then one of the members told me that it's almost like you're like the father figure on the floor. Like, we're just trying to do as good as we can to impress you or make you proud. And then I thought about that. Like, I laughed and we joked it off and stuff, but then I thought about it later on, and I was like, it does make so much sense. Because I mean, I try to make those deposits as much as I can, with the members, and not superficially, but actually give them those deposits. And it's different when someone just gives them a high five, another member gives them a high five, and when myself or one of the other trainers like really acknowledges them for them doing well, you could see them light up, and you could see them feel that like self confidence, or that self-pride essentially in their work that they're doing. So it is so true, exactly what you're saying. You have to give those deposits, not just to your team, but to your clients, to your members, whatever the case is. If you do have a business, to your family, and realize that that's what's part of about building a community, building a tribe, building a true connection with people.
Devin, that's such a great story that you shared. And it shows how great a job you're doing in a leadership role, like with your clients, that they saying things like, they want to work hard. They want to impress you. They want to do a good job for you. That shows reciprocation. So in other words, because I'm guessing they're already paying you, right? Like they're already giving you something, but what human beings want to do is we want to reciprocate. So when we see reciprocation, it means that they feel like they're like they're receiving, and they want to give back. And sometimes that's just like, hey, I want to do a good job for you because I know if I'm working hard, it's going to make Devin feel great. So I just want to pass that on as great feedback to you. Don't take, don't think that's a small deal. That's a big deal that your people are saying that. It shows you're doing a great job.
No, I appreciate that. So I want to combine the two topics that we've kind of discussed so far with the stage presence and with, the leadership and with, the books and stuff. What do you believe that there's a role in, because with speaking on stage, storytelling is a huge part of it, right? In connecting and so forth. But do you think that there's a role in leadership with that storytelling?
100%. Storytelling is how you influence people. And storytelling is one of the most powerful things you can do as a leader, because so much about leadership, it's not always about like getting people to do stuff. If you really want to help people, and you want to help them grow and change, you have to get them to think differently. I mean, that's what change is about. It's just thinking differently, because when you think differently, then ultimately you act differently. Well, how do you get them to think differently? You have to change one belief for another. And depending on how rooted that belief is in there, and this is where the role of emotion comes in, right? So emotion is just a power player for helping us change beliefs. In fact, some of the strongest beliefs you will have, or even let's say a trauma, which is just a belief, but it doesn't help us. The traumas in our life are stories embedded because of an emotion. Emotion is just that multiplier. Well, how do you communicate? How do you use the tool of emotion in the workplace? Through story. That's really the only appropriate way to do that. So a well-crafted story can not only change how people think, but then help, in a sense, cement and embed a new belief. And that's where people are going to change.
No, definitely. That makes so much sense. You have a book, an upcoming book, or it might be already released, The Call to Climb.
The Call to Climb comes out on August 5th of this year, and I'm super excited about it. It's not a leadership book, but it's a book that has been 12 years in the making. And the book it's written in a fable format about this person that, in a sense, is called to climb a mountain. But it's a special mountain where you're called when your life gets out of alignment, where your inner life, like your soul is wanting one thing, but the ego part of you is on a different path. And eventually those two can collide. And what happens with a lot of people is that the soul will nudge you when something's not right or out of alignment, but the ego often won't listen, because the goals of the ego are safety, being accepted by the tribe, by the herd. And the soul's goals are different. Your soul doesn't care, and soul, psyche, the inner life, whichever word you want to use, your soul doesn't care if it's liked by the crowd. The soul seeks to express the highest version of you. And so because of that, there's often a collision of those two. And so the book's all about that. And how do you live more authentically? And how do you really live your life? Not your parents' life, not the life of your friends, but truly walk the path you're meant to walk. That's what the book's about.
Well, I love that. That's so awesome. I'm excited for it to come out. I'll definitely be getting a copy to read in on that. So guys, get ready for August. The Call to Climb is coming out. You've climbed mountains both literally and metaphorically. What lessons would you say, from climbing could you apply to both leadership and to business?
The highest mountain I climbed was in the Andes in Bolivia. It's 21,400 feet. And the lesson I learned there, which was been repeated in many mountains, is that you cannot do it alone. I mean, some people, of course, they will climb a mountain, but if we're going to use it as a metaphor, you just need the strength of other people. At least I do. You need a rope team. And when you find that rope team, whatever it might be for you, you protect it, right? So whether that's that inner circle of friends, whether it's that inner circle of business friends for those of us who are business owners, right? Like, so often we're on different rope teams. We have several, but that rope team is so important. You got to protect it, and you got to give back to it as well. That's how we keep those relationships healthy, because there's so much interplay between humans. Like, you can be on a mountain, when I climbed that mountain in Bolivia, I mean, halfway up, I just wanted to quit. but I didn't want to ruin it for everyone else because we were down to only 3 people left. And if I quit, then it literally was over. But I was so tired. I got to this place where I thought, well, I hope the guy in front of me quits. And I really was like, if he quits, I get to go down, but it's not my fault. Right. And so, at that point, you start becoming a bad team member. And the last thing I would say about climbing mountains is that it's like anything in life that's hard, especially for entrepreneurs. You just have to have hard things in your life. Now, business is hard enough, right? Like business is hard enough, and we got AI, coming in. But doing hard things just helps you grow and be more resilient. And so whether that's climbing a mountain, running a marathon, cold plunging, it's important to have things in your life, if not daily, like every other day, that you're like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it, because it's strengthening that muscle that says, no, I'm the boss and I will say what we're doing.
No, and what you're saying about like the, wanting to give up, but not wanting to be the person while the other two couldn't complete it. You never know if that's the same thought going through their head too, right? And sometimes that's what the, just kind of pushing through that grind, or that going through the mud together as a team. Everyone could have that feeling, but no one's going to verbally say it, and they just don't want to let the rest of the team down. And sometimes that's enough motivation, right? Just to keep going on, and having that, circle, or having that rope team, as you said, can be such a huge part, because it's almost that accountability system for you to keep going forward.
Exactly. It's like your boot camp workouts. I guarantee you that most of the people in your workout would not work out that hard if they're alone. And, a few will, but most won't. And I'm like that. If I'm away from my workout group, I just can't push it as hard. I just don't. And part of that is that I don't want to let the team down.
No, definitely. They believe me. They say it all the time. Like, I would not be doing this exercise if I was by myself, or I would not be doing this many reps if it was just me. So yes, that is 100% true. An accountability system can be super, super beneficial, just to give yourself that extra push. Do you have any plans, for another hike? Are you going to do Everest one of these days? What's that looking like?
I'm not going to do Everest, but first of all, it's super expensive. Second of all, this is just my personal feeling. Everest has almost become this thing that I don't think it's a really positive thing anymore. Like, I'm quite a bit older than you. So when I was in, let's say, my 20s, if you climbed Everest, like, that's going to open doors for speaking gigs galore. If you climb Everest now, I don't know that I mean, that's still as hard as it was 20 years ago, but because so many people have done it, and some of the controversies on the mountain, that a lot of people, I don't know that they're inspired by that story. I mean, if I'm climbing it purely for business reasons. So, but personally, no, I'm not going to climb Everest. I mean, you can do everything right on Everest and still die, right? So, I'm not going to do that.
Is with the risk of, essentially death, is that what you mean by the controversies, or what do you mean by the controversies of it?
I think the controversies of, taking risks, and if something would happen to you, what's the collateral damage? So, for example, I've got 3 kids who are all in college right now. And I know that if I went and did some stupid risk, and because I'm pursuing a goal for me, and then I'm no longer there for them, that's a great argument. Is that the right choice? Everyone has to make that choice for themselves. But for me, I wouldn't feel good about that. I know I play a role in their life right now. I know if they had a choice, they would rather have me here. So them wanting me in their life is more important than me doing something like that. Now, I don't have to climb Everest to do hard things, right? Or to push myself to the limit, but that's just where I land on it. And, I remember, so one of my main keynotes is me telling the story of us climbing this mountain in South America. And so I begin the keynote, and it's very dramatic, and we're climbing up, and well, within 10 minutes, people quickly learned I am not the hero of the story, because I'm the one that was like, I want to quit, but I hope my friend quits. And, basically what happened was, like, I just stopped talking to him because I thought I'm not going to encourage him. And then eventually I thought I'm going to discourage him so that he quits. Right. So then, like, I was like terrible on this mountain. But as I tell that story, it actually pulls people in more, because I put them into the story, right? Like that I'm doing something that I wanted to do, but now I'm so tired, I don't think I can do it anymore. And now I'm acting in ways that are not consistent with my values, right? So that's actually a very universal story. But anyways, one day I get off stage and this guy comes up to me and he says, when you got on stage, I thought, oh, great, here's another one of these guys. I think he said middle-aged white guys, but here's one of these guys, another mountain story that you're going to conquer some mountain. He said, but then as you got into it, I realized how wrong I was. And, it was so inspiring. So this almost opens up another door of this idea that we are not inspired by the people who always knock it out of the park and who just go and do, crazy big things without struggle. And, it's that piece of vulnerability. Most of us have some kind of doubt and insecurity inside of us. And when we can see someone else that we might be looking up to, and they have that same doubt or insecurity, it's one of the most inspiring things, because we think, oh, I thought I'm the only one, but if they can do that, then maybe I can do that. And what happens in that moment is people begin to believe in themselves. So that's why, even for those of us who are business owners and you have employees, just remember that if you always have it all together, okay, that's fine, but you're missing out on actually inspiring your staff. And my staff know I don't have it all together. So
I think that if you think you have it all together, you're probably a little delusional, because we all don't have it all together. There's some area of your life that isn't as good as it could be. And at the end of the day, at different levels, there's different new devils, and it's like we're all just figuring it out as we go. And we're conquering the obstacles in front of us. There's new obstacles ahead, and that's just the game of life, let alone, believe me, I know, in business. But how would you say for, leaders, whether it's in a business, whether it's, you're the leader of your household, how would you, or what advice would you give to a leader that's facing a setback, but still trying to motivate or inspire their team?
that's a great question. So one of the mistakes I made early in my career was that when things weren't going well, I just wanted to hide that fact, right? Because how is this reflecting on me? But that's purely coming from the ego. One of the best things you can do as a leader, see, you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't even have to be succeeding all the time. But what you have to have is that resilience and that determination and that courage. That's really what comes down to leadership. So, for example, let's say in my company, I don't know, let's say I said, hey, we're gonna launch this new division, and we're gonna start, we're going to focus on whatever, manufacturing companies. And we launch that and it totally fails. And then our cash flow we're having tons of cash flow problems, whatever it might be. Well, at the end of the day, I'm going to own that. But I'm also going to say, like, hey, we're in a tough spot. I'm not going to lie to you. We're in a tough spot. And this is where the leadership comes in. But here's what we're going to do. Right. And so people key off the leader's belief more than they key off the leader's results. We even see this in a negative way, in a sense that someone can be just like failing left and right, and not even actually know what they're talking about, but they just talk about it confidently. And people are drawn to their confidence. They're drawn to their belief. So at the end of the day, as a leader, the belief has to be in, number one, yourself, and number two, your people. And as long as you have those two things, hey, products can change. So I don't always believe in a product I created. Like, hey, maybe this will work, maybe this won't, but I believe in me and I believe in my people. And as long as I have that, we can rebuild anything into an empire that has been scorched to the ground.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up, I like to ask one question, and this question, it's not a tombstone, it's your legacy wall, right? So on the James Robbins legacy wall, what would be the one lasting message that you would give the up and coming generations from the lessons you've learned along your life's journey?
If I was going to give a parting lesson to people, it would be to realize that the purpose of your life is to bring the most honest, authentic version of you to this world. And that's the gift. That's the gift you bring. It's not what you accomplish. When you eventually have your own funeral, someone will read a eulogy, which is usually all the things you did and accomplished. And that eulogy will last a minute and a half. And the rest of the hour is everyone talking about you. And so have the confidence that wherever you are, it's okay to be where you are, but continue to grow, but understand your worth comes from who you are. That's what I would pass on.
I love that. That's an awesome, that's a mic drop and a half, where can people connect with you? I know, your book's coming out in August, but in the meantime, where can people connect with you and learn more about what you got going on?
They can go to jamesrobbins.com and find me there or on LinkedIn. The book that's coming out, if you want to go to that website, it's up now. It's iwillclimb.com. iwillclimb.com. You can go there and either pre-order or just sign up for updates and release notes, things like that. But either of those places, you can find me.
Awesome. Guys, those will be in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, that will be in the video description below. Make sure you guys share this episode with a friend. I mean, James's story was inspirational, and it shows you that, you can achieve anything, but more so, share this episode with a friend that is a leader. Share it with a dad, a mom, and really help them, lift them up, because again, if you're helping lift other people up, your circle that gets bigger and lifts themselves up, it's only going to lift you up, and you might be that weak link on the rope team, but they're going to be the ones to pull you up, right? So James, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on the Mindset Cafe.
Devin, great to be here. It's really good to connect with you, and I appreciate what you're doing. I wish I had been doing what you're doing when I was your age. So keep up the great work, inspiring people.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll definitely connect soon.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking. I hustle harder, I go against the current, cause I know my mind is rich to be collected.